how's it going? Hello, welcome to the stream. Yay, you made it, Nika. Rob, how's it going? How are you, friends? Happy Wednesday, happy midweek. It is Wednesday, right? Yes, it's midweek. Hope your week's off to a good start, and whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time zone, happy time zone. I hope you're having a good day, a good week. Time zone gods have showed down on me and I can catch a stream this week. Yay! Awesome. I'm so glad you're here, Rob, too. I'm glad anyone's here at all. If you can catch a stream, that's awesome. And if you can catch the VOD or the replay, that's also awesome. But if you can make it live, it's more fun, right? Because we have fun in chat. Yeah, today I feel a little just off, a little out of routine. So hopefully I have everything I need. We're just going to do casual sort of painting and swatching. And talk about Pelikan Hubs a little bit because I did go and I got an ink and I'll show you. And then, as one does at a meetup, everyone brought ink samples and inks to play with, pens to try, and so we'll talk about that. I'm going to swatch a few of the ink samples that I have. I also was able to go to the Vancouver pen shop, so if you are in Vancouver, make sure you stop by the pen shop. They don't have an online storefront, so it's good to go in person and kind of check out their products and pens and inks and all kinds of things. So I did get a few things from there. So we're going to talk about all of that, I think. And yeah, let me know how you're doing in chat. Let me know what you're up to. If you went to Pelikan Hubs, how did you find yours? I did sort of... I saw photos and videos of people who went on Instagram and elsewhere. And I find it super interesting that each hub has their sort of unique spin on it, depending on who the hub leader is, and where, I guess, the location is and how many people attended. So I find that super interesting how everyone sort of made it their own, even though it falls under the, Pelikan umbrella, and Pelikan sort of organized this like hub day and stuff. But it's super cool. I think it's really cool how every experience is sort of different depending on where you went. Hopefully it was all good though. I know there were little things here and there. And spoiler alert, our hub, it was sort of an offshoot of the Vancouver main one, which I think had like 120 people attend, which is a lot. So we kind of became the introvert group, and I think there were like 15 to 20 of us who met up, and we did not get... Actually, I should say, I think the hub leader didn't get any of the ink of the year, which is Apricot, I think. And I think they were all sort of the same ink. And she was able to get a couple of bottles of the Apricot ink. And so I got a sample of it, which I'll show you because we'll swatch it. And, but that's okay, It's kind of nice to try different inks, and to be honest, I don't think I would use a whole bottle of this ink color because if you know me, I'm more of a blue, teal, green, that kind of ink person, especially in my pens. But I think it should be fun to paint with, especially. So we'll take a look, and we'll take a look at some of the other inks I got as well. I should have checked because it turns out there was a couple nearish me. Yeah, Rob, I find that there's a little bit of a challenge though, like when you register for Pelikan Hubs, I think it was in July or something like that, you kind of have to pick a location, right? And then once you register, it's hard to sort of change like where you're going to go. So you have to reach out to people and this and that. Not that it's not doable, but I just feel like maybe if it was easier up front to see... I don't know how, but, to see where else your options are, maybe that would make it easier for some people. Luckily, I was in a group, we were chatting about setting up a hub that was near us that worked for all of us. So that worked out. But, if you don't know anyone or you don't know which hubs are going to be near you, then it's kind of a little bit of a challenge. But hopefully you were able to get to one and London is close to me anyway. I'd be surprised if there suddenly wasn't one in London. Yeah, exactly, right? Like the big cities will have one. Though I did hear that some of the big cities just had bigger hubs, right? So if you're kind of an introvert or it's overwhelming for you to be in a big group, then I can see how that kind of can be a little bit of a, just something you have to keep in mind, I guess. But I did hear that there were smaller hubs or more smaller hubs in number compared to last year. And I think that's super cool. I think that's encouraging, especially if you are an introvert or you're not able to go to some of the major cities to attend a hub. I think that kind of shows that, we as pen people and our community is growing. There are more and more people who are interested in pens, who are, maybe they're not like pen collectors, or maybe they don't use them on the daily, but it's really nice to see people, they're curious about pens. They're kind of like, what is happening with fountain pens right now? And if they're interested enough to attend hubs and, kind of take a look and be part of the group, I think that's super cool. Hi, Pop Al Gal. I'm glad you could join again. We're just talking Pelikan Hubs. I know you weren't able to go to one, but maybe next year. And hopefully there's more meetups. Like our group sort of talked about doing a mid-year meetup, similar to like a Pelikan Hub style, but obviously it wouldn't be Pelikan Hubs. But, getting together as a group, because now you sort of have met and know that there are people around you who are into pens, which is really fun. And so we kind of talked about doing like a 6-month sort of hub or meetup. And I think that's kind of cool too. So hopefully, people sort of keep the momentum and continue using pens, continue using their supplies and stationery. And if it brings you joy, then I say go for it. Also, if you're new or you're watching this replay, I'm Corolla. On socials, you can find me as From Corolla. And we talk stationery. We like talking stationery on this stream. I do pretty much anything art-related, stationery-related. I love fountain pens. I love painting with fountain pen inks and watercolor paints, and that's kind of what I do to relax and sort of come down from, the stress of life. And I like to take a minute to just kind of be intentional about using my stationery and finding joy in it. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're joining. I'm glad you're watching. And hopefully you get some time to play with your stationery too. Now, I'm going to adjust my tripod because I'm having issues with technical issues, but it's fine. First, before I jump into Pelikan inks and all that stuff, I did want to say my latest YouTube video, if you haven't seen it, check it out. That would be awesome. It's about the Tom Studio Field Mouse. It's a new release from Tom Studio. It is the cutest, smallest refillable pen I've ever used. It is literally this small. And it's refillable with fountain pen ink. And it comes with a loop cap, which you use to unwind the end. And it pops out a wick, which is refillable. You just dip it into your favorite fountain pen ink. And you can use it over and over. And the writing tip is a Japanese writing tip. And so it's kind of like a felt tip, which is great for writing and drawing. And I added mine. And the whole idea is, I know it's really small, so you can't do long writing or drawing sessions, obviously, because otherwise you're going to have a hand cramp. But it's really nice to have on the go, or if you're traveling, or you throw it into, your purse or your, or in your pocket, right? Like it's super, super small. So take a look at that. I'll share the link so that you have it. So yeah, it was just really fun to kind of do that. So take a look, and and that's that. So that's kind of what's up with me. what's up with you? What are you up to? What have you been playing with lately? So when I went to Pelikan Hubs, like I said, it was a smaller group. So there were like 15 of us or so. So I brought some ink samples and I brought this ink archiving book. This is the second volume from Dominant Industry. Let me tell you, if you are sort of an introverted, awkward person like I am, like I don't like doing small talk. So when I go to a meetup, I just kind of like sit, observe my surroundings, start playing with inks and stationery, and then I sort of have conversations, talk about stuff. So if you are kind of like that, I would suggest and recommend that you take something with you that you can sort of like either a journal or a notebook where you can sort of start swatching things, or somewhere where you can do like coloring or painting. Because I just like sat down at a table, said hi, of course, just kind of like an awkward little hi. And then I just started taking out my ink samples and I started painting with them. And it is a great conversation piece, right? Like us stationery people, ink people, pen people can sometimes have a hard time just, talking about stuff, especially if we don't know each other. But when it comes to talking about stationery, like, oh, what ink is that? What pen are you using? Oh, what notebook? What paper? All of a sudden, those are conversation starters. So the fun thing was, I just sat down, I took out this ink archiving book, which I have to admit I haven't used as much. Not as much as all of Octopus, anyway. Lisa does a great job of like painting in here. On her streams especially. So check out Olive Octopus if you want to watch Lisa paint in here. But I thought, you know what? I should bring this to a meetup just to like, talk about it, show people, whatever. And I thought it'd be great to have this as where I would swatch ink samples that other people have, just because it gives me an idea of what that ink would look like if you're painting with it or drawing with it. Not necessarily just inking up a pen. And so it's an alternative way of swatching, a bunch of sample inks. And, they have a spot here where you can note down what the inks were. And right away, some of them were really, really fun. Fun sheeners, which I don't really like to use in my pens, but I love painting with them. Some shimmer inks and some standard inks where I was like, you know what? I wouldn't mind having a sample of this ink to later try in a pen. So that's kind of what I did. It's an excellent idea, right? Like I also, took my notebooks and like my swatch book and stuff like that. But I thought, you know what, take this out and start just like painting in here. And eventually, people started talking about, the inks that they brought, walking around looking at other people's sample inks and stuff like that. And we also talked about dip pens. So what I did was I brought this book, but I didn't bring all like my painting supplies because it's a lot and I don't have a big enough bag. But I did bring both of my dip pens. So this one is the Kakimori stainless steel nib dip pen or dip nib. Wow. And this is the Colorverse Shuttle dip nib. And so I brought both of these. And the fun thing is you can kind of compare and contrast both nibs in the way that they swatch and the way that you can sort of paint details. And that's kind of interesting too. And there were quite a few people who had never tried the Colorverse Shuttle. And so, just like going around the room, letting people try stationery tools is super fun. And talking about the difference and how they work and stuff like that. So I found that kind of cool. So I think what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to keep sort of swatching in here. And I'm going to swatch the inks that I did pick up. So a few people actually everyone I think brought ink samples to share. And so I kind of swatched a few and picked out some of the ones that I really liked. So we'll swatch that in here. And then we'll also do a little bit of painting flowers because that's what I do. Hello. Hi, Jeez. How's it going? Liber, how's it going? How are you? I wanted to ask you what it feels like in your hand and what it's like to use. Which one? I missed your comment, Papa Gal. Let me know which one you're talking about. And I will share. So that was the Tom Studio. Oh, yes. Okay, so I did a pretty detailed writing and drawing sample, like in real time in my video. And I found that as I was writing with this and drawing with this, I just naturally sort of gripped it like this. And so I found that it was comfortable to just kind of rest in the bend of my finger. And while it looks awkward, maybe, I found it actually quite usable, if that's the word. Like I said, I wouldn't write like this for too long because yes, you would probably cramp up your finger or your hand. And I don't think the purpose of this kind of pen would be to do sort of, you know, journaling entries and things, but for sort of quick jotting down notes or doing a quick doodle or something that pops into your head, an idea, and just getting it down on paper, I think is a great idea. It's the thing about Tom Studio, I will say too, is that he just kind of pushes the envelope on what you can invent in terms of stationery tools, especially writing tools. And I think the idea of having a refillable pen where you use your favorite or standard fountain pen ink and just have that as like on the go sort of thing, I think is pretty interesting. So yeah, I mean, you could sort of play around with how you're going to grip it, but I think I naturally sort of started using it this way. And I thought it was kind of easy to use. And I will say, I think of the Field Mouse as kind of like an emotional support pen at this point, because I've added it to my TN passport. It's kind of my travel journal or travel sort of, you know, I capture things on the go, especially when I'm traveling. And I feel like having this pen is kind of like emotional support for my notebook as well, is that in case I don't take out a pen or, you know, have a pen handy, this is always here. So it's just kind of funny. But, you know, I know that this will not be right for like everyone, right? It's not something that everyone needs. But I think it's, you know, really cute. I think it's a great idea. And like I said, you know, it's sort of like, it's there if you need it, right? As, of course, you can throw regular pens into your bag when you're traveling, but I think it's kind of fun. Okay, just adjusting. I need to watch, yeah, go watch the video. I think it just came out a couple days ago or yesterday or something like that. A couple days ago, I put it out. So no worries, you have time. But if you are curious, take a look at the video. Hi, Fountain Pen News. Just popping in to say hi. How was your Pelikan Hub? How did it end up going? Was it okay? Because I know you put a lot of work into it and hit a few snags, but hopefully it was all good. So like I said, our hub pretty much only got the Tanzanite ink, which I'm happy with because I love blues and teals, blue blacks, dark blues. It's right up my alley. So I was totally fine with it. It's kind of a cute box to put it in. But I don't know if you've tried the notepad that comes with the little box, the box set. But I didn't try it, and I heard that it may not be fountain pen friendly. Like it might just be like sort of a notepad just to write notes or something like that. But we can also try that out. Just put it to the side. So that's the Tanzanite. Have you tried this ink? And if you have, what are your thoughts? Do you like the color? Let's take it out. So usually what I do when I get a new bottle of ink is I take a little bit of it and I put it into a vial and I number it at the top, and I keep a list of all the inks that correspond to the numbers. So if you don't know about my ink vial system, typically that's my process with a new bottle of ink. Or if I'm cleaning out a pen and I have a ton of ink in that pen, for example, if I can't, like if it's not legible, then I will just clean out the pen. But sometimes, you know, I feel like I could paint with the ink, and so I throw it into an ink vial. Sometimes if I'm running low on an ink sample, I will also just throw it into an ink vial. And all these ink vials sit close to my desk, and they're a visual cue for me to use my inks. So use your inks. Find a way to cue yourself to use your inks. Samples, you know, when you have just a little bit left in your pen and you're cleaning it out, or if you get a new bottle of ink and you just want to sort of play with it, explore it a little bit. A great way of doing that is just throw it into an ink vial, have this sit on your desk, and it sort of reminds you, you know, you got a new ink, use it. And I usually do this before I ink up a pen with it, because if I'm painting with it, or I use a dip pen and I just draw flowers, it's my daily practice. Usually I get a feel for the ink. So the properties, you know, whether it's shimmer, what the shimmer behaves like, if it's sheen, is it a high sheener, or is it, you know, just sort of a subtle sheen, that kind of stuff, just the properties of it. And then that way it gives me a better idea of what pen I probably want to put it in, what nib it would probably work well with. And yeah, if it's like sort of a daily use, or if it's sort of in a pen that is just for fun, right? So that's kind of how I come at my inks. And so that's what we're going to do with this one. We're just going to put a little bit in a vial, and then we'll swatch it, and we'll also paint with it. So then we'll get a better idea of the ink. And I'm also going to put a couple of drops in my paint palette so that we can paint with it. So let's see. It's a very nice blue black. So Edelstein Tanzanite. I don't know how long this ink has been out, but I've never tried it before, so I was happy to get a bottle of it. So I'm pretty sure I would use this. So that's Tanzanite. We'll see it as it dries too. So you can use a paintbrush when you're painting in the ink archiving book. which is really fun to do because then you can dilute the ink with water and just get a little bit more of a feel for the ink shade without having it be super saturated. That's the word. So it's not super saturated, but also it's kind of fun, especially if you're on the go or you're at a meetup or something like that, to just have your dip pen and just kind of move the ink around a little bit. And then that way, you know, you still get a feel for the ink while it's saturated, but also as you move it around, a little bit diluted. And it's really fun because then you end up just coloring. And it's kind of like having a coloring book that's fountain pen ink friendly. So that's a really nice color. I actually really like it. So that's Tanzanite, and I'll also show you the Apricot. It's something else, right? Apricot something. But this, I guess, is the ink of the year. Let me look it up so I can share it with you. And not everyone got a bottle of this, which is fine, I think. Because personally, Apricot Achat. Because personally, I don't know if I would use it as much. Let's see. The Pelikan's Perch. Let's take a look there. So yeah, ink of the year 2025, which is really nice. Like I do like the shade. It's very pretty, but it's definitely one of those inks that I would end up painting with. So let's do a swatch. And I'll put a little bit in my palette as well to paint with. And I'll use my Colorverse shuttle dip nib. Let's do it here. That's a very nice peach color, apricot color. And you can actually, it's quite legible with a dip nib, so I'm not sure if you put it in a pen, should be okay, because it doesn't seem like super light, but it's definitely on the lighter shades of what I tend to ink up my pens with. So yeah, you can just do a little bit of coloring with it. It's very nice. So I'm glad I got a sample of it because it's nice to try different shades and see what they're like. And then the other thing I did over the weekend on Saturday was I met up with Karina from Karina Loves to Plan, and it was so good to meet a fellow Canadian who doesn't live near me, and so we tend to meet up at pen shows. It was kind of nice to meet her in, you know, closer to home, and so we got to hang out for a little bit. And we ended up going to the Vancouver pen shop, and it's a nice little shop. They have a lot of pens on display and pen options, lots of inks and accessories and things. It's not a huge store, but it's nice to sort of walk around. They're friendly, and I ended up picking up this Octopus Fluids write and draw ink called Polar Bear White Polar Bear. It's literally a white ink, and apparently you can use it in fountain pens, but it dries really quickly. So unless you're using the fountain pen daily with this ink, which I don't know, are you writing with a white ink daily? maybe in like black paper notebook, like an Archer and Olive or something. But I personally don't think I would write with it every day. But I do want to use it with a dip pen because I think it's really interesting. And I do have a black Post-it or sticky notes that I can try it on. So super curious about that one. And then I also picked up the Robert Oster and Vancouver Pen Shop collaboration ink. So I kind of like the shade. It's like a really nice latte coffee gold type color, and so we'll swatch that as well, and I'll throw that into an ink vial so we can paint with it and have some fun. So let's do that, and then we'll keep swatching. So we'll throw some of this in here. I could see drawing with white ink. Yeah, I guess for me there's more uses to drawing with it, for sure. Especially if you're, you know, painting and you want to add some highlights to your painted piece, or, you know, something like that. But we'll see. We'll try it out. We'll give it a go. So this one is Vanpen 86. That's nice, which you can't see. She has a green tone to it, so I can, like a very dark olive green. It's very earthy. I like it. So this is... That's very nice. Very cool. I thought it was more, I thought it leaned browner than it seems. But that's okay. I like this too. I like earthy shades, so I'm happy with that. It's a very nice color. Okay, so we have those two. And then we have this one, Octopus Fluids, White Polar Bear. Have you tried Octopus Fluids inks before? Because I tried a couple of samples at Pelikan Hubs. Someone brought a few samples. And that was the first time trying them out. And I thought they were really interesting. So, let me see. Here were a couple. Octopus Fluids Unicorn. A very high sheener, you can see. And then Octopus Fluids Medusa, which is this purple sheening green. So purple and green, and then like blue, pink. I don't know personally if I would throw it into a pen, but I thought it was really, really cool. Very interesting inks. So I think that's why I was like, maybe I should pick up something from Octopus Fluids, and I decided on white. Because it is, I don't have a white ink. Wow. And it just kind of piqued my interest a little bit. And yeah, I thought it'd be kind of fun to paint with. Pretty, yeah. It was very pretty. So let's see what it looks like on black paper. And try the Colorverse Shuttle Dip. Very cool. Though this is not a fountain pen friendly paper, but I think that's the only black paper I have, so I'll try painting with it, especially on like a dark ink, and see what that looks like as well. Yeah, so the paper is just absorbing it. It's like invisible ink. It goes down white and then it just disappears. So no to the black sticky note. Great, that's good to know. That's okay though. I'll have to look into how people are using their white ink a little bit better. Dubes, how's it going? How are you? Just playing with ink that I got over the weekend. Some new inks, some ink samples, and I'm also trying out this Octopus Fluids White Polar Bear, which is a white ink, and it's drying invisible. So that's quite interesting. But the other inks we're swatching are Pelikan, Edelstein, Tanzanite, Apricot Achat, and the Robert Oster Vancouver Pen Shop collaboration ink, which I'm really liking right now. So that one's pretty. So the other inks, the other ink samples that I got, Rainy Days from, it's Cafecally, which is also a new to me brand. I'll show you. Oh no, Rainy Days is, maybe it is. One second. Tono and Limbs. So it's a Tono and Limbs collaboration ink with Cafecally, if that's how you pronounce it. A soft blend of purple and blue to signify the hydrangea season. Very cool. So it's through Pixelette Studio, who's a very kind Vancouverite, so fellow Vancouver shop, and they have a few of these Tono and Limbs collaboration inks with Cafecally, and someone at the Pelikan Hub meetup had a few of the bottles and kindly shared samples, and so I got a few, and they're really cool. They're really, really cool. I like the bottles too. Funny, I swatched the black Octopus Fluids on a coloring card, then put the white ink over that. Yeah, I think the white over another ink will probably be better. Oh, actually, maybe it's just me. It's not disappearing. So it could be, oh, I know. It's because I wrote over the part where there's glue, or the sticky part on the other side, and I wonder if that's why. So if I wrote on just like the paper part, or swatched on there, it should be okay. I guess that's why. That's weird, but also interesting. Yeah, I think if I use the white on top of another ink, like a dark ink, it should be okay. So I'll try that as well, as like a highlight ink, just to add a little bit of white to a dark color. So it didn't disappear. I know. Weird, right? I was like, wait, it's a disappearing white ink. How is that possible? And yet I guess it has something to do with the sticky part on the other side. The mystery has been solved. I love solving mysteries. I love when you're kind of like, what is happening? And then it makes sense like a minute later. Yeah. It's invisible ink. Brad inspired me to clean out some pens today. I know. I like watching people clean out their pens, even though I don't like doing it myself. And I think all of Octopus and I were both just like, just put it into a paint palette for later. But, you know, it depends on how much time you have to like actually do something with it later. But that's why I like sometimes throwing them into an ink vial, knowing that I probably won't get to it until later or the next day or whatever. And they actually last in these ink vials for a little while, so you have time. But yeah. I kind of like just, you know. saving my inks for painting. I got Topaz from my Pelikan Hub. Oh, nice. Topaz is a nice one. It didn't disappear. We tried so hard. I know. I was like, do this. Get your palette out. Come on. It's all good. I'm a little sad it isn't an invisible ink. Look, I got a little excited when I was like, ooh, I could write something, and then it just disappears. But maybe I just write it on the sticky part and it's all good. I mean, if you write on white paper with the white ink, you'll be good. Invisible ink. But yeah. So rainy days. I think I swatched it already. I did in my plotter square. So it is very, very nice. And I thought, you know what? I want a sample of this. What's this one? So it is like, there are other blue purple inks. But it is sort of those two colors that work really well together, and they look really nice too. So I'm gonna put beside this one here. We'll see as it dries. It's a very nice shade. So there's that one. And then I picked up a sample of KWZ brown pink. So it's kind of like a Bordeaux color. Plum, very dark plum. So I don't have any KWZ inks. So I was very curious about this one. And I really like the shade, because I like this sort of burgundy plum colors. This one's nice and dark too. I should write down the name actually. Let's see. Brown, pink. On this one, I should write the name. So I'm going to do that quickly. Tono limbs. There we go. All right. Then, where's the nib holder from again? I know that you've talked about it before. Sadly, my memory. Are you talking about these ones? This one is a River City Pen Company one. It was actually Rich made it for Eric from Amarillo Stationery. So it was a collaboration nib holder. And then this one is from Zodiac Pen Co. Bart doesn't sell these, but you know, you never know. He might. But yeah, they're very pretty. I like nib holders because they're just so comfortable to, especially if they're done by a maker. They're just comfortable to hold. So the other ink I'm going to swatch is Troublemaker Kelp Tea, which is like a really nice kelpy green. Not the pigmented ones like that Octopus Write and Draw though. Clean those quick. Yeah. Or keep those sealed. Those are harder to clean when dry and don't reconstitute. Yeah. I can tell by like the just as I'm sort of pulling it through the pipette and stuff, the consistency of it seems thicker or just like a little bit more paint-like. So, yeah, I know when I got it at the Vancouver pen shop, the person helping me was like, you know, they knew someone who put this specific ink into a fountain pen and left it over the weekend or something. So it was like a couple of days and it dried out. So they had a hard time restarting the ink. So I was like, I think I'm going to just paint with it and use a dip pen for now. We'll see. I don't know if I'm a risk taker enough to throw it into a fountain pen just yet. Especially if I know I'm not going to use it every day. If I did use it every day, then it'd be fine, but I don't think I can commit. So it's all good. This one is Troublemaker Kelp Tea. Have you tried Troublemaker inks before? I have a couple. I think I have 2 or 3 different bottles of Troublemaker inks, and they're quite nice. I like the shade because, again, it's earthy, which is very in line with fall, autumn. Tend to be the colors that I'm drawn to during the season. And this one is right along those lines, so I'm happy. I like it. And again, it's great to paint with, especially if you're painting earthy themes like flowers and that kind of stuff. So that's Troublemaker Kelp Tea. which is greener than the Vancouver Pen Shop Robert Oster ink. But it's still sort of that like olivey seaweed type of color. Love them, yeah. It's a rain day here. It's rainy here in Vancouver area for the past like month. It's been rainy and cloudy and just kind of gray. So I guess it makes sense. On brand. Diamine Earl Grey. I got a sample of this because it's really nice. It's not a new ink or anything, but I don't think I've tried a sample of it before. But I have heard about this ink because a lot of people like it. So I saw someone had an ink sample and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try it. And it's very nice. I actually used it somewhere. But anyway. Let's see, is it here? I don't have a lot of grays. I have a few grays. But I'm always up for finding a nice gray. I think my favorite gray right now is probably Dominant Industry and Wonder Pen's Tuna Gray, because it's not too dark and it's not too light. It's like just like a really nice shade of gray. But I'm always up for finding more grays that I like. That one's a nice one. Cloudy colors to fit the current weather, I think. And then the last ink sample is Colorverse Coffee Break, which is very coffee colored. So let's try that out. Very brown. So yeah, it is very much like a nice coffee color. And sort of see the underlying yellow, orange tone to it. Yeah, I like my coffee a little lighter. Yeah, actually, I do too. I like very milky coffee. We just started to have fall weather this week, which is insane for the Midwest this time of year. I I like fall weather. We call it hoodie season because we can take out our hoodies and get all comfortable. But I do not like the rainy part of it where it's just like consistent rain. And you sort of feel that dampness, right? It's just like, ugh. It is a nice brown though. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's just part of the living on the West Coast, especially, you know, Vancouver, British Columbia, Seattle, sort of have that grayness, the wetness, the rainy. That's just a lot of rain, so, and it's consistent. It doesn't let up. Yes, hoodies and scarves and Vessi shoes because they're waterproof, so you got to have your waterproof sneakers. So yeah. All right, so those are the inks that I got. Some samples, a few bottles. Very nice. Dark tones except for the apricot. And maybe the rainy days is actually not like super depressingly rainy. It's like fun rain, you know, when it's just coming down lightly before it gets too cloudy. So that's kind of fun. I actually got a couple of other ink samples over the weekend, but I'm not going to swatch them just yet because I also want to paint with these ones. So I think just to keep it manageable, I'm going to pick a few of these inks to paint with. And then once it sort of dries, I think I'm very curious to try the white polar bear Octopus Fluids to see if we can get some highlights going. So I'm going to use watercolor paper in my sketchbook, and then I'm also going to use my trusty Tomoe River paper everyday book from Galen Leather. So it's kind of fun to do on both paper because you know, watercolor paper handles paints and fountain pen inks really well. You can also throw a lot of water on there, obviously, and it's fine. Whereas on TRP, you just have to be a little bit more aware of how much ink and water you're putting on this paper. And while it handles inks really well, like I put a lot of saturated ink on here last time, it does bleed through and ghost, and it can warp your paper. It can also transfer to the paper underneath because it's thin, right? It's not meant to be, it's not meant to have a ton of ink thrown on it, especially when you're painting. But I don't mind because I only use one side of the paper anyway, so it's fine. But it's kind of a nice way of seeing how the inks perform on paper that I would use normally in my planners and my notebooks and stuff. So, but I also compare against watercolor paper because, you know, you could put a lot more ink and water on here and you can play with diluting them and blending them and having a bit more fun. So we'll do both again, just with some of the inks that I have because we have time. So we're going to try the Tanzanite, the Apricot, and the Vancouver Pen Shop Octopus Fluids, and then maybe we'll do a couple of the other ones. I also want to pick a green, so I might use Kelp Tea as the foliage, and we use Rainy Days. Probably not the gray because I'm a little grayed out, and probably not the coffee, though I kind of do need coffee. So yeah, we'll kind of play around with these and we'll see where we go. And it's kind of funny watching the white ink because it's like coating the glass. And so you can kind of see the consistency of that ink. Very interesting. Mound of Meat, the paints can also be a grocery list. Yeah. They can be. Gorgeous colors. Boo, show us the goods. Oh, there's so many. No, there isn't. There's like 4 other ones, but I'll show you next week. I'll show you next week when we have more time. And I'm just laughing about this white polar bear that actually does show on black paper unless, you know, you want invisible ink and you write on the sticky part. But anyways. So I'm going to put a little bit of these inks in my paint palette so we can paint with this. Oh, which one's this? Okay. All right. And also Troublemaker Kelp Tea. Okay. So let's use the Apricot ink first because it's a lighter one, and I like to paint with light colors first because then I can layer darker colors on top. Paw Pal Gal, thanks for subscribing with Prime. And thanks for joining the club. So I knew this would be a really fun ink to paint with. It is. It's a really, really nice color. Really fun. Pen Addict Anonymous. Yeah. If you know, you know. Keep me coming back. I get it. Yes, of course. If I show you all the goods, you won't be back next week. It's also, you know, I have to keep a few things up my sleeve. So, all right. So we have the Tanzanite. And I think I'm just going to kind of blend it in a little bit. Because it's so dark, so when I draw on top of this, on top of these outlines, you're not going to really see too much of it, so it's kind of nice to just blend it in a little bit with the other flowers. Just to get a little bit of that color in here. Not necessarily have it be a prominent part of the piece. I should swatch it too. And then same with this Vancouver Pen Shop. Actually, I might leave that until the end because it sort of leans a little bit greener, and I think that might help with the leaves a little bit. But let's throw in Rainy Days, which is also a nice light color. Now we'll lighten up this piece a little bit. I'm going to throw a little bit more apricot in here. And lighten it up even more. You got the good goods. Yeah, it is kind of spooky, isn't it? I didn't even think of, Halloween type colors, but it turns out these are great Halloween colors. So we're gonna do, let's do Kelp Tea, which is Troublemaker. It's a little bit lighter than the other ones, so we'll do that first. And I just kind of throw it around randomly. And then we'll add a little bit of this Vancouver Pen Shop one, which is a little bit darker. So it's kind of nice as a accent. You can also blend it a little bit. And we'll swatch it. Let's try. I think I'm going to add a little bit more of this dark Tanzanite because I'm going to layer a little bit of the white Octopus Fluids on top just to test it out a little. So maybe adding a little bit more darkness in here is okay. It's very like, I love the apricot in here, but yeah, it's like very spooky, fall. Here, I thought you were planning the spooky colors. Yes, I was. Let's go with that. I definitely pre-planned this specifically. So I'm gonna let this dry a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, but just leave it by the windowsill a little bit. And let's do a similar spooky sort of painting here. Let's see. Okay, these are my greens. All right. So we'll do the apricot. And then we have the blue Tanzanite. I'm gonna layer a little bit in there, or blend. Which actually, when you dilute it, it's a very nice sort of grayer, like a blue-gray. So that's nice too. Then we have Rainy Days. Troublemaker, Kelp Tea. And then this Vancouver Pen Shop one, 86. So there we go. You can see this dries a lot faster. Absorbs the water really well, so it's kind of nice. I might layer a little bit of this Vancouver Pen Shop because I still have ink, so I'll just add it a little bit to the ink that I already have down. There we go. So we'll let that dry as well. Let's see. I think this is almost dry. That's kind of nice. The Tanzanite is more saturated here, so it looks, overall this piece looks darker than this piece just because I had less ink to work with on this one than I did on this one. But it's still cool. So you kind of have the dark version and the light version. So okay. BRB. All good. So while we wait for this to dry a little bit, these have now dried. So the swatches in this ink archiving book, they're now dry. So green and brown look really nice together. I kind of like this combination as well. and this. Look very nice. I didn't write the ink here, so I'm gonna do that. Those Diamine Earl Grey. So let's do that. All right. So while I think there's a few spots that are still wet, but I'm gonna write down the ink names here as well. This is dry. These two are somewhat similar. Troublemaker Kelp Tea and Robert Oster, the Vancouver Pen Shop collaboration. Kelp Tea is lighter for sure. Has a little bit more sort of that pink tone coming through. But they go really well together. Not my typical palette to paint with, but it kind of worked out nicely because it's a little bit different than what I probably would typically pick, but that's okay. That's what I like about painting with inks is that you can pick random inks and still kind of make them work together. My only sort of rule with painting with them, especially if I'm doing flowers, is I try not to pick too many dark colors because like I said, when I'm drawing on top of them to add a little bit more detail, it's hard to see, you know, black on like just dark colors. So it ends up just looking like a dark mass of, you know, something. And so I like to have at least one or two sort of light colors, and this is where, you know, the inks that you don't end up writing with because they may be lighter, muted, beigey. Like if you have a beige ink, I always say paint with it because it's really nice to paint with. You can obviously see it better, you can draw on top of it, so it's kind of a nice way of using up those types of inks, and especially colors that I typically don't write with. Like I personally know I would not write with a peach or an apricot type of color. It's just not a shade I throw into my fountain pens, unless it's for a specific reason or, you know, it matches with another color or something. But just in general, it's an ink that I definitely would love to paint with, and I have no problem doing that because it's very pretty. But it's very nice, right? Like it looks really nice on paper, especially when you're, you know, using more, like if it's taking up a lot more room than if you're just writing with it. And it's great for blending as well, especially with some of the darker inks. So for drawing the details, I use a Kakamori pigment ink. It's just a black pigment ink, and I use a dip pen. And my usual go-to is a Kakamori stainless steel. You can also use a Colorverse or any kind of sort of dip pen. It's a great use for a pigment or like sort of, you know, waterproof, those types of inks if you have those. Because also they tend to stand out when you draw on top of pre-existing ink or paint. So I kind of like that. If you're going to draw on top of dark ink, whether you're doodling or, you know, you're doing flowers or whatnot, the trick that I like to use is use some of that white space around that ink. So don't just layer the black ink on top of your dark ink, because you're probably not going to see it. But if you're using some of the white space to sort of outline what it is that you're drawing, it's a little easier for the eye to make out, you know, oh, you're trying to sort of draw petals or whatever it is, than if you were to just use the dark ink spots. And that's kind of a general rule I use with all the inks, regardless of whether it's dark or light. Using some of that white space to suggest what you're trying to draw, especially if it's like, you know, abstract shapes, or you're not exactly drawing a perfect object. That's kind of nice to use white space in that way. But yeah, especially for dark ink. And for light ink, I don't want to cover up too much of the ink, because then obviously you won't be able to enjoy the ink spots, the blending. So using some light lines is a nice way of sort of highlighting those ink outlines. So yeah, you can see some of the black pigment ink on top of the dark Tanzanite, but it's easier to see when you draw the outline and it sort of pulls in some of the white space. So it's a simple sort of tip or technique to make the black ink stand out on top of dark ink, is to have some of that white highlight. But also we are going to play with the white Octopus Fluid ink as well in that way. So we'll try that. See what happens. Because then that would be a great way of, like Paul Palgal mentioned, to paint with white ink on top of dark ink, or if you have dark paper. I love watching you paint. It's so relaxing and fun seeing you in your element. I hope it's fun. I hope, you know, because I do find it relaxing. So hopefully it sort of conveys that element. Let's try some of this white ink. I can always paint with it as well, but I kind of want to try just with a dip pen at first. That's nice. Yeah, it's kind of nice. I think it absorbs a little bit, so it doesn't stand out too much, but I'll try painting with it too. I think it just makes the shade that it's on top of a little bit lighter. So it may not necessarily sit on it as a white ink. Okay, I'm gonna try painting with it. We'll see when it dries. So this one is sort of the lighter version of that painting. I'll write the inks first as well. I guess I don't have to. Alright, so those are the inks. I'm gonna use, actually let me paint a little bit of white on top. And I'm going to use the same pigment, black ink, to draw the details. Because watercolor paper is textured, anyway, it's cold pressed, so it's textured. You sort of get those line variations when using a dip pen like a Kakamori. without really trying, just because it sort of catches on the paper a little bit. But yeah, I kind of like the contrast. It definitely feels scratchier on this nib than obviously on like TRP paper or Tomoe River. But the look is interesting, so. And ends up using more ink as well, so you end up having to dip more often than you would on TRP. But still nice. I like the look of it. And yeah, I think the white ink just sort of lightens up a few of the areas. So it's kind of nice to, if you want to lighten something up, or add a little bit of a highlighter or highlight it a little bit. In terms of using it with a dip pen, I think it's sort of, you know, it's similar in that it sort of just lightens up that area a little bit if you want. Or you have to wait until the ink that you're layering on top of is like fully dry. And then you can add a little bit of white ink so you're not reactivating the first layer of ink. So that's kind of fun to play around with, like how it sort of sits on top there. Or even like on the green, you can add a little bit of highlight. So it's fun to play with, I will say that. Definitely not going to throw it into a fountain pen anytime soon. Hi Jessie, how's it going? But it is kind of fun to test out and try out new inks, and see in, you know, in what kind of situations would you use this type of ink, right? Waterproof ink for writing, swatching, and coloring. So that's interesting. Very cool. It's definitely not as thick as like a Kakamori black pigment ink. It's a little bit, it feels a little bit more watered down than that, but and that's probably why you could potentially put it into a fountain pen. Versus, you know, a pigment ink, you still have to be very careful if you do put it into a fountain pen. Just keep using it often enough so that it doesn't dry out. And if you clean it out, make sure you clean it out very well. Oh, the Hook Wizard, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And welcome in. So that's drying. This is pretty much dry. So because of the paper, right, you can sort of see the difference. You sort of see the difference. Oh, like that. Yeah, you can sort of see the difference in lines and ink pools and some of the colors, even though on here it's a little bit more saturated. So the ink is going to look a little bit darker than using, you know, what I had left and adding a little bit of water. So this is kind of the more diluted version. But it looks very cool, right? And I like layering colors, you know, a light color like the Troublemaker Kelp Tea, and then something darker just to create a little bit of contrast, a little bit of shadow maybe. And then the way they blend together is really nice too. So I'm very glad that I used the Apricot ink because that definitely lightens up the whole piece. And it brings a little bit of that, you know, orange, yellow element to make it look a little bit more fall or autumn. That's very nice. Definitely something to think about when you're using fountain pen inks is what paper you're going to be writing or drawing on or painting on, because paper does make a difference. So where you sort of see a little bit more, you know, pink tone in the Kelp Tea, for example, you don't really see that too much here. It's definitely sort of a different shade, even though overall it's the same color. So I think the white ink is still drying a little bit here. Yeah. Also, probably because it's waterproof, or yeah, because it's waterproof, it might take a little longer to dry. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you're writing, if you're using a dip pen or in your fountain pen. If you're using something like this, give it a little bit more time to dry, or have a blotter paper ready to go to soak up some of the excess ink. Yeah. I tried to clean waterproof India ink out of a fountain pen. Tried. Yeah. Tried for sure. It's tough. It's tough to get it all out. Try using distilled water. That might help too. Especially when I'm using the Chokuro Platinum ink, which is like the black, really, really dark black ink. Cleaning that out of a fountain pen or like a dip pen. When I'm using a dip pen for that, I use distilled water, which is what they recommend because it pulls out some of those impurities that regular tap water might not. Because what it ends up doing is the ink clings to your dip pen or your fountain pen a little bit more, and it's hard to sort of get that out. But it is work. It is work, and probably part of the reason why I don't like cleaning out pens. So for the past couple of months, I think ever since the summer probably, I've stuck to about 10 fountain pens that I have inked up with various nibs, inks, and for various reasons of using them. And I'm trying not to go above that number just because I don't want to clean out more fountain pens. I'd rather just use a dip pen, you know, or a glass dip pen, write with the ink and just move on. And then have, you know, a handful of fountain pens that I use for writing and other things, for journaling and stuff like that. So, yeah, I totally get the cleaning out work. I gave up on this pen. It was handmade with a cheap nib and section, and I wasn't concerned. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's not that big of a deal. Also smart for throwing that kind of ink into that kind of pen because, you know, if something were to happen or it doesn't come out, then it's not a big deal. Instead of putting it into a higher end pen and then having to sort of work it out. So that's what I typically do as well is with some of the, you know, pigmented or like hardcore inks that tend to be a little bit, you know, moody and temperamental, especially when it comes to cleaning them out, or if they dry fast in a fountain pen, I usually throw it into, you know, a preppy or something that, you know, I'm okay with if it just sort of stays in there. Yeah, my daily writers are all dirty and need cleaning. Yeah, that's sort of like a monthly task for me. Definitely a monthly thing. But I try not to, I don't know, I try not to have to clean out too many pens because it's just, I don't know, it's just not that fun. And I don't mind cleaning out a handful of pens, but when it comes to like, you know, 10 or more that I have to clean out at any given time, it's like, I don't want to do it. Someone else do it for me. You have to go teach. It's totally fine. I'm so glad you were able to join Pop Gal. I'll see you next time. Have a spectacular week. Yes, have a great Halloween. Have a great sort of end to October, which is nuts that October is coming to an end. Like, where's time going, right? But have a good week, and I'll see you next time probably, right? Next week, maybe. The Chinese knockoff Twisbies are nice if you're lazy. Yeah, you don't have to feel guilty about a $5 pen, right? And sometimes they're a little bit easier to take apart because you're a little bit more confident if you do need to sort of do intense deep cleaning. It's kind of like, you know what? I'm okay if I'm okay taking this pen apart if I have to. Or at least, flushing it out and trying to get as much of the ink out for sure. But yeah. Well, these inks turned out to be really nice inks. So I'm really glad that I picked them up. Really nice sample inks as well. Not that they're new to me. Not that they're all new inks, but it's kind of nice to try out inks that, you don't have or may not necessarily pick up. Do I need another gray? Probably not. Do I need another brown? Probably not. But it's nice to try them out and at least have them as a reference somewhere. So I think that's kind of the cool part about this book is that, you sort of build up a reference archive, which is what it is, of inks that you either have or have tried. And I kind of like that aspect. So definitely going to take this to more meetups and pen shows and other places where I can try out different inks and at least have them as sort of a reference that I can look back on if I'm, in the mood of getting new inks, or if I'm just kind of, I need to sort of look at past inks that I've tried. But yeah, definitely like this palette. Seasonally, it makes sense for fall. Very nice colors. So yeah, we'll see. I think I'm gonna have to play around with this white ink a little bit more to get a feel for how I'm gonna use it. But it is fun. It is fun. So I'm going to have this ink vial sitting on my desk to kind of remind myself to play with it a little bit more. But well, this one's a nice one too. I'm glad I picked this up. I don't know if if you have sort of local shops that are accessible to you, but I find that especially here in Canada, the shops tend to do collaboration inks with ink makers, and so it's kind of nice because it represents the kind of that shop and the kind of shades that mean something to them. So there's usually a story behind it or some kind of quirky detail of why they chose those shades or made that collaboration ink. And I kind of like those stories behind the inks, even though, sometimes you're like, I don't know if I would use that ink regularly, but it's still kind of nice to know stories behind those inks. Get to know the shops a little bit more too. And I like Tanzanite. I know a few people, I think, sort of said that blue blacks are a little bit boring, and I'm not going to disagree with that. But they are a standard sort of color that I like to use instead of, the bright blues or the really dark blacks sometimes. It's kind of nice to have an in-between that, I like that you can dilute it and it sort of becomes a little bit more blue-gray, especially if you're using a dip pen or painting with it. You can sort of play around with the shade a little bit, make it a little lighter if you want. So that's kind of nice as well. But friends, I am going to hop off. Thank you so much for hanging out, for joining me, for chatting and sharing your experiences with pens and inks and all that stuff too. And I hope you found this interesting, and I hope you found it inspiring so that you can take out your sample inks, right? Like, especially if you go to pen meetups or you go to shops and you sort of pick up sample ink vials. I hope this sort of encourages you to take them out, to paint with them. If you have a swatch book, or you don't have to have the dominant industry ink archiving book, but make your own swatch book, where you sort of archive the inks that you're trying out, even if you don't end up liking them or you don't end up buying them or whatnot. It's kind of nice to sort of document that you've tried these inks and this is what it looks like, and just have a little bit of fun that way. Oh, no problem, Dubes. I'm glad you joined. I'm swatching some inks now and we'll play with them after. Awesome. Yeah, for sure. It's kind of nice to play with them and figure out some shades that you like and like working with as well. And part of the reason why I do these floral ink paintings is so that I could sort of flip through and pick some colors that I like. You sort of see they vary seasonally or month to month even. It just kind of depends on what inks are on my desk, what inks I acquire. And I like to sort of look back and figure out some of the inks that work really well together. And when I do plan out ink palettes for painting or for inking up my fountain pens, it's a great way of figuring out, what colors did I really like working with and what inks had properties that I really, really enjoyed. So, yeah, it's just a little bit of fun. I will probably be back next Wednesday, so we'll do a little bit more fun stationery play and painting and all that kind of stuff. And we'll chat about stationery then. I hope you have a really nice spooky week. If you have kids, I hope they have fun trick-or-treating or, being part of Halloween. And I hope you have a gentle start into November. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks so much, friends. If you're watching the replay, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here and for being part of the community. And now go play with stationery and go play with inks. Bye.